Yeah, thank you very much. So let me just explain to the listening public that if this were a civil registered aircraft, okay, then a lot of times the organization and the management and the investigative process will be what we, under the International Civil Aviation Organization Annex Standards and Recommended Practices 13, okay, Annex 13, Aircraft Accident Investigation. And what does is that from the onset of the accident, when the investigators or the investigator in charge gets to the scene of the crash and the site is managed and they start preliminary site analysis and data collection, nominally within 30 days, they are supposed to come up with what we call the preliminary findings.
Okay.
A lot of times, these preliminary findings hinges on what we call factual data.
Okay.
So, like I said, that one would nominally include what was the purpose of the flight, what type of aircraft was involved, crew information, whether they were, their qualifications, their proficiencies within the last 30 days. And then we'll look at their flight hours, we'll look at factual data, how many fatalities, and then we'll look at weather conditions. I can see Nanayao is conducting a simulation.
Yeah.
In actual fact, when we are recreating this scene or doing a recreation now with AI softwares, after we've retrieved data from the flight data recorder and the CVRs, we are going to use the exact data that was as parameters that were recorded in the flight data recorders. We'll put it into the software and then use the same Z9, and then we'll fly the same profile until the last known point where the mishap happened. And so the factual data nominally it's what is grounded in fact, air traffic instruction, weather conditions from GMET, and then the investigator in charge would just brief the public about these things and then also highlight the fact that the investigation is ongoing, and hopefully in a year's time we should be able to come up with a final report, or if we've not completed the investigation, we give an update. In this case, it's a military aircraft. And so even though from my experience as an aircraft, as the investigator, safety officer in the Air Force, a lot of our procedures, it's akin to Annex 13, but we are not bound, that the 30-day briefing that we are nominally supposed to give from the ADREP report. The Air Force, nominally, like Kanabuaji rightly stated, there is going to be a board of inquiry that will be set up. The preliminary investigation team will do the field work, they collect all the data, and then that data will be handed over to the board of inquiry, which will be set up with well-seasoned experience, I would say competent people from various backgrounds, flight operations, aeromedical, maintenance, maybe some aspects of operational control and command. And then in this case, we are even most likely inviting participants from outside or third parties just to give some credibility to the investigation. And so for us, that time bar is not necessarily applicable. It will be up to the board of inquiry to decide as and when they want to maybe give an update. And mostly that update might not necessarily come to the public. It might be to maybe military command, because during the investigation, if we find out that, hey, we've identified something that is safety critical to the rest of the fleet, maybe to the Z9 operation, or to, it's a management factor that needs to be addressed. That will be communicated to higher command. It will trickle down to the wings and to the squadrons for immediate changes to maybe some of our procedures.
Okay.
Other than that, probably we'll gear on to the very end of the investigation, and then what is, I would say, appropriate based on the security classification for the public will be released.
Quick question. Some people have said that because this involves the Air Force, the investigative team must include non-army people, for want of a better expression, because they feel like it must be I hear the word more broad-based investigation. Is that a point worth thinking about?
Did you say army people?
No, so basically, Air Force. So the people doing the investigation are Air Force people.
Yep. Yeah, because we have what we call the Ghana Air Force Operation Standards and the Ghana Air Force Safety Standards. Okay, so that is what governs us. Just like in the civil side, they have the Ghana Aviation Directives, which is steeped, in the Act. So we also have our standards, and that is what empowers the higher command to set up the board. Like I'm saying, nominally, you might not have civilians taking part in the investigation or the board. But because of the national prominence of this particular mishap, I will not be surprised, and it's been a practice, because the last investigation that I was part of, we had civilians who are experts, helicopter experts, they were invited to join. And that sort of gives a level of credibility. I mean, we don't want a situation where people insinuate that we are trying to hide stuff. And so it's appropriate that even though it's within the ambit, the gambit of the military to do what we normally do. In this case, I will not be surprised if we have third parties being invited to.
Thank you.